Jihaad Campbell is the second coming of Micah Parsons. And that's not clickbait. This isn't a video that's just supposed to get you to click on and rage bait you into commenting. This is genuinely true, whether it be the measurables, the statistics, the eye test on the field, whatever metric you look to evaluate players by, you're going to find that Jihaad Campbell and Micah Parsons are incredibly similar in the way that they play, the way that they look, and the way that they need it to be developed in order to make them stars. Micah Parsons landed in the right spot in Dallas to make him an all-pro. If Jihaad Campbell hits the right spot, he could do the same. If he falls to Detroit at the 28th overall pick, they would be absolute fools not to jump on this player and put him in a position to edge rush next to Aiden Hutchinson and turn into the next great Detroit Lions pass rusher. Now, today, we're going to take a look at Jihaad Campbell. We're going to take a look at his athletic profile, what he did at Alabama, and really why he compares so incredibly closely to Micah Parsons, and then talk about the likelihood of him turning into Micah Parsons at the next level. So, with that being said, let's kick it off with just an overall look at the Alabama linebacker. Standing at 6'3", 235 pounds, Jihaad Campbell was named a first-team All-SEC defensive player this past year. In his career at Alabama, he played 35 games, totaling 184 tackles, 16 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks, 2 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries, and a touchdown. His junior year, the final year with the Crimson Tide, was by far his best, as in 2024, he contributed in 13 games for Alabama, where he totaled 117 tackles, 12 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, an interception, 2 passes defended, 2 forced fumbles, and a fumble recovery. He was one of the most productive linebackers in college football and one of the best linebackers in the SEC. Now, he did all of this despite being more athlete than linebacker. He is an incredibly raw prospect still and really did most of his contributions just by running to the ball carrier and tackling them, by being faster and bigger and stronger than a lot of the opponents he was playing, even in the SEC, and was able to put up stats like that despite not even necessarily being utilized to the best of his potential. Now, to point out just how good of an athlete Jihaad Campbell is, his RAS score was a 9.87, meaning he is in the 98th, almost 99th percentile for athletes at the linebacker position. He graded out with good size, great explosiveness, and elite speed for the position, with standout performances in his broad jump at 10'7" and his 40-yard dash at 4.52. Now, taking a look at the strengths and weaknesses of Campbell, there are quite a lot on both sides. Again, the strengths are his quickness, his size, his pursuit speed. I think he has really good vision, and I think he sees the position very well for a young, inexperienced linebacker. He has elite burst, and his versatility is unlike anything that we have seen. Alabama was so confident in his athletic ability that they lined him up not only as a linebacker, not only as an edge rusher, not only on the interior at times, but also as a slot cornerback for over 30 snaps this season, at deep safety for 5 snaps, and boundary cornerback for a singular snap this season. He lined up at every single possible placement on the defense at one point or another this season, and he's that good that the Alabama defensive coordinator trusted him to do so. Now, with being such a good athlete, there usually comes with a bit of a drawback, and it's that Jihaad Campbell is still quite raw for the position, despite putting up good numbers, despite looking really good on tape, and despite being a great football player, he still has quite a few weaknesses. He tackles incredibly high. He almost always makes contact right at the shoulder pads, never at the waist, never at the stomach. He is always high, and it hasn't really hurt him at Alabama because, again, he's bigger, he's faster, he's stronger than a lot of these running backs, than a lot of these quarterbacks, than a lot of these even tight ends over the middle. But at the NFL level, it's going to come back to bite him. Players are going to break tackles. Players are going to be bigger and faster and stronger. And if he continues to tackle high, he's going to have a high missed tackle rate. He's not great with contact. If the offensive line is able to get to the second level, they oftentimes take him out of the play. He is at his best when he is untouched, which makes obviously a lot of sense. But there are a lot of linebackers that can shed blocks, right? If the offensive line gets to them, they feel comfortable shedding that block. They feel comfortable stacking and waiting for the running back to get to them. Jihaad can't do that. He's not technical enough to get off the block. And if players get their hands on it, if the offensive line finds a way to get their hands on Jihaad Campbell, he's done. He's almost out of the play entirely and almost entirely gets erased from the defensive scheme, from the defensive play. It essentially makes it a 10 on 11 for the Alabama Crimson Tide defense. And the last one is he just doesn't attack blocks. And I think that's part of the reason that he's not great with contact, right? He is much more of a finesse player. He doesn't like to, be real physical. He doesn't like to necessarily take on these big offensive linemen because he knows he's going to lose. He tries to get around them. He tries to, be quicker than them. And while that works sometimes and actually works quite a bit of the time, he just isn't powerful enough to do a lot of the other things when that offensive lineman is able to make contact. So when those guards and centers got to the second level, when they got their hands on Campbell, he was kind of dead in the water, and it really stands out on tape as a real big deficiency as to what he has as a player. Now, moving on to the reason you clicked on this video, the Campbell Parsons comparisons, right? And unfortunately, there are a lot of them, right? And everybody's going to be upset about it because Micah Parsons is a one-of-one athlete at the position. But if there's a second, it's going to be Jihaad Campbell. First off, we'll take a look at their statistics. In his final season at Penn State, Micah Parsons totaled 109 tackles, 14 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, 4 forced fumbles, a fumble recovery, and 5 passes defended. He played all kinds of positions from linebacker to defensive line and actually played a number of versatile positions just like Jihaad Campbell. Campbell's final season, just as a reminder, is 117 tackles, 12 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, a fumble recovery, 2 passes defended, and an interception. A difference of just 8 tackles, of just 2 tackles for loss, the same amount of sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 3 passes defended, with Jihaad getting the slight nod with the extra interception. They had nearly identical junior seasons at their level of play, and both of them look very, very similar on film. Taking a look at the measurement side of things, it's almost scary how similar these two players are. Jihaad Campbell measured in at the NFL Combine at 6'3", 235 pounds. At the NFL Combine back a few years ago, Micah Parsons measured in at 6'3", 245 pounds. Their arm lengths both have an arm length of 32.5 inches, while Jihaad Campbell has a hand size of just 10.5 inches. Micah Parsons is at 11. Jihaad Campbell's broad jump was 10'7". Micah Parsons was 10'6". Jihaad Campbell ran a 4.52 40-yard dash, and Micah Parsons ran a 4.36. That is the biggest difference. Is Micah Parsons has a little bit more of that top end speed, but their acceleration means that when they're running at the running back through the line of scrimmage, through the offensive and defensive line in the trenches, they both close space incredibly quickly, and they both look very similar to what Micah Parsons was doing at the Penn State Nittany Lions. They are nearly identical players. Statistically, they are almost the exact same. From a measurable standpoint, outside of the 40-yard dash, they are nearly identical. You could put these two statistics, these two measurables, these two RAS scores up next to each other and erase the names or switch the names, and I don't think anybody would blink if you erased the 40-yard dash time. And at linebacker, when you're lined up 10 yards away from the running back, the 40-yard dash is not that important, right? Your lateral speed, your quickness, your acceleration are things that are far more important for the linebacker position, and those are things that Jihaad Campbell is nearly identical on with Micah Parsons. A lot of development in the NFL, right? What makes Micah Parsons is the defense he went to, was the defensive coordinator that he got, was the decision to go from linebacker to edge rusher, right? Those are all things that may not happen at the next level, and they may not work for the next team that tries to do it. Not every super athletic freak linebacker can make that transition, but I think that Campbell can. From the snaps that he played at Alabama, all 112 on the defensive line, he looked more than capable of doing so. He looked, of course, a bit raw because he didn't do it a whole lot, but he looked as though he could do just about everything that was asked for him. If he lands with the Detroit Lions, he'll get a chance to work with both Kelvin Shepard, a former linebackers coach that turned Derek Barnes into a great player, that turned Alec Anzalone into a great player, that turned Jack Campbell into a great player, that got the most out of 6th round pick in Malcolm Rodriguez a few years ago. And he'll work with Casey Rogers, right? The new defensive line coach who did a great job with Shaquille Barrett, who is a very similar archetype as a pass rusher to what Jihaad Campbell will be, was great with Kalijah Kancey, was great with Vita Vea, was great with, all of these edge rushers in Tampa Bay, now comes to Detroit and could have the opportunity to develop Jihaad Campbell as well. So the Lions have the coaching staff to make it work. I think they have the players in mind to, support Jihaad Campbell as he develops in time. And whether they draft him to be a linebacker, whether they draft him to be an edge rusher, I think he'll succeed at both because he's so incredibly raw. If he can learn to tackle a little bit lower, see the field a little bit more, and just kind of be more experienced at the linebacker position, I see no reason he can't be a Pro Bowler. But if they put him on the defensive line, if they put him at the edge rusher, they have plenty of run stoppers. They have Aiden Hutchinson. They have Josh Pascal. They have Marcus Davenport. They have Aleem McNeil. They have DJ Reader. They have Roy Lopez now at this point, and they can get another run stopper just about anywhere. But Jihaad Campbell could be a special pass rusher. And if the Detroit Lions pass him in at 28, I think they're going to live to regret it. And I think he could be and should be the pick if available with the 28th overall selection. So with that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. Let me know down in the comments below your opinions now that you've seen the full story, you've heard the full analysis. Do you agree? Do you think Jihaad Campbell can be the next Micah Parsons, or do you think he'll fail to live up to expectations and be the next super athletic linebacker to not meet the hype? I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say, but with that being said, thank you all so much for watching. Please leave your comments down below of players you want to see a draft profile on, as well as just players you want to talk about as a potential fit for the Detroit Lions. It all helps the channel a lot. If you haven't subscribed yet, please go down below and do that as well. But with that being said, thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, and as always, go Lions.